Greetings, everybody. Once again, it is Silver Thunder, the extraordinarily ordinary gaming squirrel, coming back at you today with another episode of Monster Hunter World. Today, we're getting right into the fray of things, fighting a tempered Zinogre, which I was kind of sprung into the middle of things, so I got really flustered, and my gameplay reflects that at first, but yeah, keep on watching. You will see how well I exactly fare against this electrical beastie. And I want to apologize for this almost week-long absence from the channel. As you could probably hear from my voice, I got a little sick this past week, and I have lost my voice, and today is the first day that my voice has officially gotten to a place where I can actually feel like that I can record. It still might sound a little scratchy, so apologies once again for that. But I wanted to go ahead and make a video before I am seeped into irrelevance by the algorithm. Wanted to thank you guys really quick. I've reached five subscribers here on YouTube on this fledgling channel. You know, every single subscriber is worth it. Every single subscriber counts. So just want to thank you so much for everyone who has hit that subscribe button. I hope that you keep enjoying the content that I put out, and thank you for sticking around so far. Like I said, I'm going to be focusing mainly on Monster Hunter, unless if I get a big indication that Call of Duty has a greater vested interest otherwise. But for now, we're going to go ahead and dig on in. Before we get to our topic of the day, something I'm wanting to incorporate in my videos as well going forward is to recommend an album for each video that I have, just because I love music, love talking about it, and instead of necessarily doing a full-formed album review, I'm just going to throw a quick shout out for an album for you to check out. And today's recommended album of the day is called Destrier by the band Agent Fresco. They are a Icelandic progressive pop rock group, and this opus, it has some, once again, that progressive pop rock sound with some metal overtones and math rock complexities that have some of the most haunting but catchy choruses and melodies that become the earworms you never thought that you'd love. It's for fans of Sigur, if I'm pronouncing that right, Ross, but much faster, and bands like Leprous and Vola as well. So if you've never listened to that one, go check it out. It is really good. One of my favorite albums of all time. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and go to our topic for this video while we are hopefully going to take down the Zinogre. Like I said, he's kind of got me on the ropes at the moment, but we'll get back into the swing of things. And something that I was thinking about as I was once again watching anime with my wife was the nature of villains and why some villains are more compelling than the heroes that the story centers around. We all really enjoy villains. Just ask, any 90s kid who likes Disney movies. Probably the most memorable character in most of the movies are, going to be the villains. You think of characters like Hades from Hercules and Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, things like that. The protagonists might have really good arcs in those movies, but really it's the villains that steal the show, and really, I don't know, there's just something memorable about having such a wicked force for our heroes to go up against. And it got me kind of just thinking, why that is, and I guess just the nature of villains in general. So I just wanted to share some quick blurbs about it. And I think that at the core, what makes villains so compelling in and of themselves is that, there's a few things. Firstly, I think that villains really do speak and embody to the evils that we want to combat today. They represent something that the storyteller views as wrong or evil. You have your very classic evil traditional villains like Maleficent, just kind of evil for the love of the game, as they say. Evil for evil's sake, just, she got really miffed that she wasn't invited to a party, and therefore she decides to wreak destruction on the whole kingdom and swear revenge on a baby princess that had no want or will of her own at the moment whenever she was afflicted with the curse. And then you also have, maniacs like Fire Lord Ozai, the good old standard take over the world plot, but, wrapped in a package of such a menacing character that was not afraid to trample over friends, family, and everybody in between to get what he wants, his goal of world domination. And you also have, as I mentioned before, one of my favorite animes, My Hero Academia. You have All for One and his just wicked, capricious, maniacal evil and pride that he once again just wants to trample the world and have it completely subjugated under his boot. So yeah, villains like that, they represent pure evil, which is kind of an oxymoron whenever you think about it, but just the things that no one wants to see within the world today. So there is a primal reaction to that. That both people and, certain squirrels like myself have. And I think also what makes villains relatable too is, and they're not always, these very grand scale villains don't necessarily always have this kind of have an aspect to them, but I feel like that the really best ones do, and that's villains that are relatable. That makes them extremely compelling whenever they have relatable emotions and goals tied to their villainous actions. Where you can see yourself considering their point of view, if maybe not necessarily agreeing with them 100%, but just being able to empathize with how they feel to a certain degree. Sometimes the villains are a victim, or sometimes the villains are they have been slighted in some way, but they have chosen to respond to their victimhood or their betrayal in a evil or villainous way that cancels out the innocence that they garner from being a victim or from being slighted or betrayed. They completely overreact. And villains one villain, I should say, that really embodies that in particular for me, as capricious of a maniac he becomes, is Syndrome from The Incredibles. Where he becomes absolutely hell-bent on revenge against Mr. Incredible after he was slighted by him by just wanting to help him do hero work and wanting to legitimately be a sidekick. And, we can empathize with his feelings of getting slighted by his absolute favorite hero with no compassion really from our hero. In that instance, kind of shows you how Mr. Incredible himself grows by the end of the movie, when he learns that he should have treated Buddy/Syndrome with greater respect, as well as value the things that he has in his life whenever Syndrome threatens to take it all away. Whenever you have a villain that is able to really speak to those kind of emotions in a realistic way, not just like a tragic backstory just for the sake of it, but one that's really intertwined with the plot and one that makes sense and is realistic in their goals and their emotions. I think that's what really makes for a good, compelling villain of this kind. So, yeah, in that sense, the way that they foil against the hero really the really good villain is the one that catalyzes the plot. They are the main antagonistic force that is helping to drive things forward, that is compelling the hero to the heroism that they are being called to. Without the villain, you really don't have that kind of action in the stories going on. But similarly, a villain might be more compelling than a hero if the hero is not particularly well written. There are some examples of it, and I don't want to necessarily give too hot of a take. But in this instance, I don't know if he's necessarily poorly written, but Batman from The Dark Knight, not necessarily my favorite incarnation of Batman himself, but he is completely outclassed and outshined by the Joker in his movie, which makes the Joker, of course, definitely helps with the stellar performance from Heath Ledger in that. But the Joker was just such a insanely chaotic yet incredibly intelligent and logical villain. It just kind of hurt the brain in all the best ways, I suppose. So, I don't know. It's interesting. Like I said, I don't necessarily say that I don't want to necessarily say that Batman was poorly written, but definitely not the best written protagonist, in my opinion, in that movie. As fantastic as that movie is overall. But speaking of overall, we also I think another thing that makes villains so compelling for us in the midst of all the evil and villainy that we get to see them witness is that a lot of times in movies and shows and books, we get to see the exact moment that a villain becomes the villain. A lot of villains are ordinary folks before something insanely tragic or terrible happens to them. Or we see the exact moment that they finally snap and things like that. And I think that there is, especially in our love for fellow man/squirrel, there is a want for restoration of things, especially whenever we see the villain being more personable and related and even heroic in and of themselves before they fall. You know, as much as people like to dunk on the Star Wars prequels, I think Anakin Skywalker is a great example of this. You know, we see him as a little boy, we see him, his first taste of adventure and saving the galaxy and things like that, and him having the relatable goals of wanting to protect his family and wanting to... almost carded here. Sorry. But wanting to, further his goals and, wanting to be a good Jedi, wanting to embrace his family, but being forced to choose between the two of them. And whenever he chose his family, unfortunately, his fear and paranoia and his want for control of things made him spiral down towards villainy in such a tragic way, to the point where it felt like that there was a point of no return, which makes Luke's want for his restoration in later movies all the more compelling. And eventually Darth Vader does get his restoration at the very end of his life. So that's a good example of that arc. Also, we see, once again in The Dark Knight, Harvey Dent, how he was originally the crime fighter, the legal crime fighter, I guess I should say, parallel to Batman, and Batman wanted him to even take up the mantle of Batman originally, until Harvey got into that devastating accident and the Joker catalyzed him into villainy himself. Extremely tragic. Ultimately, when it comes to villainy and what makes a villain more compelling than a hero sometimes, and just when we see the example of heroism and villainy and storytelling and all, is that you want the villain to have a parallel arc to the hero, and often almost be like a mirror or a shadow of the hero, being presented with similar choices and similar challenges, but making the villainous or evil choices or self-serving choices, as opposed to the selfless or heroic or sacrificial choices. Instead of the hero's arc climbing upwards, you want that villain to just as strongly arc downwards into villainy. And sometimes whenever that arc crashes down so hard and so personally, that's whenever we could really find the villains extremely compelling, even outshining the hero in some instances. It's very interesting. Well, what are your thoughts about all of these things? Do you have any examples of movies that went over the similar traits that I did, were villains that are more relatable or more compelling than the heroes? Do you have any examples of, a poorly written hero being completely outclassed and outshined by their villains that I didn't happen to think up of at this moment? I don't know. You tell me. Leave a comment in the comment section below. And, while you're down there, go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel. Every little bit helps, like I said earlier in the video, and I appreciate it. Right here, I'm going to provide some more hunting commentary. Got this Bambaro that was the bane of my existence for this part of the hunt. I was getting incredibly crowded out by the Zinogre, and then the Bambaro comes and kind of helps, but also kind of does not help. Yeah, that is an example right there of not help, of getting a boulder to the face. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm aiming to probably continue to play Monster Hunter World for the foreseeable future. I might switch to different Monster Hunter content for the videos of this channel. That way I can kind of keep the variety going. But especially where I missed a few days last week, I kind of wanted to make it up by just sharing a couple of hunts on this channel from Monster Hunter World, as I am grinding slowly but surely to my way to get to Fatalis. Speaking of compelling villains, you know, the overarching villain of the Monster Hunter franchise. Excuse me. Never have fought him before in any of my iterations of Monster Hunter that I've ever played. So I really, really want to be able to get to him. I'm also just trying to get to through the prerequisite hunts to get to him. Hashtag Electron is still kicking my tail. And I'm also still trying to beat Raging Brachydios. So, yeah, if you have any feedback or advice for those fights, let me know in the comments below. If I'm able to get a win on either of those, I will have to record it and upload it for one of my hunts. I think that would be a lot of fun. We finally got the Zinogre on the run. This one's been a little bit of a toughie. Compounded by the interference from other monsters in this quest. And hey, also while you're down in the comments, throw up this information. What is your main? What is your main weapon? What is the weapon that you have stuck with for the most games in the series if you've been playing? Of course, for me, like I've said before, my main is the bow. But as much as I like to dunk on Gun Lance, I really do enjoy Gun Lance as well, and both of the bow guns. I really just fancy myself more of a ranged hunter than a melee. There's just something about it. But here we're going to go for the capture. Yeah, might be the coward's way out, but at the same time, this coward is alive, and that's going to get me some more face stones. So you can get a view of my equipment here as soon as I find it in the menu. But I wanted to thank you guys so much again for coming on by, tuning in, listening to my rambling about villainy and all the things there within, and also a bit about the hunt unfolding in the background. I'm going to try to get back to my regular schedule of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but we will see how things go. Without further ado, this has been Silver Thunder, and I hope to see everybody on the next one. Take care.